Jensen off the front for 200k, the rear cam of Brendan Johnston, the brake attacking each other all day. Beautiful scenery out through Geelong to Warrnambool, and of course a bit of downhill action as well, and riders trying to come back, getting dropped and come back again. This is the Dirty Warrny, Australia's longest gravel race. So the Dirty Warrny is a 246 kilometre gravel race, 3,000 metres elevation, and drawing its inspiration from the Melbourne to Warrnambool road race, which is the second longest road race in the world next to Milano San Remo. The race runs from Geelong all the way through to Warrnambool, and it goes through a real mix of terrain through the Victorian countryside, through the Otways forests, and through Haytonsbury as well. Just really amazing terrain, and it was really cool to be a part of the inaugural event. I'll take you through how the race sort of unfolded for the first 3/4 of it in the men's. Sorry I could not get to the women's event to cover that, but I was only one person with one car, and I did my best to get what I could. So super exciting event. We had the gravel national champion Trekkie Brendan Johnston here, Mitch Docker was there, Grace Brown, all the big hitters in the gravel scene as well. So super event, and we'll get stuck into how the day unfolded. So the start was held at Mount Dunedin Estate, a really nice winery, vineyards, all that sort of stuff, and you can see all the riders getting ready. Nice conditions to start as well. Pretty, well, not too cool. You can see it's a bit of an arm warmers day, but people are still rocking the skin suit at the front. Everybody's sorting out their bag drops. There's Mitch Docker's sick van. Of course, Jensen Plowright there, heading to Alps and Phoenix soon. But a really cool start as well. Super early start, 5:30 in the morning. So shout out to everybody who got up super early to travel to that event. But you can see Brendan Jones there just getting ready for the inform make. There's Brendan Johnston. Here is the start. Little gun off as well, thanks to Karen, the event organizer. How good is she? And the race was off, and it was really pretty docile start. Two guys got off the front super early, and this was Connor Sands and Jack Aiken in the blue. Now about a minute behind them, here is Jensen Plowright, and I've actually forgotten the name of the gentleman who was with him, but these guys were not far behind, and they were ready to go. 246 kilometres in front of them, and this was probably about the 20 kilometre mark. So off they went, and the bunch rolled through pretty easily, I have to say. They weren't moving too much. Brendan Johnston, the national champ, had he had 3 stops inside the first 50 k's. He said his bars kept slipping, and so he was over the side of the road here, tightening them up with an Allen key and getting back through the bunch. But he had to make a couple of big efforts here, getting back to the bunch that luckily weren't moving too fast. You can see him just going past the group that's already been dropped. So here's some of the chase. Brendan just working hard. Said he didn't feel too good for most of the day, but luckily he was able to get back pretty easy. You can see the bunch pulling up for a bit of a pee stop here, and Brendan just getting some food in, replenish some of the stores, and they started to hit a bit of a pinch here. You can see the bunch thinning out. A few of the people just getting shelled out the back already. This is Trekkie from the back leading into that first little pinch, and you can see he's got Curtis Dowdell in the wheel, Matt Bird there in the bright or the white helmet. And you can see them just churning through the bunch as they got this little pinch. Someone's dropped a chain there, and just moting through everyone there. How about that guy's bar? Super wide. And Curtis here in the multicolour blue and green, and Matty Bird just flying on his wheel. I think someone up here just drops their chain, almost takes out Matt Bird as well. I think he loses it just here. Next guy coming up, perhaps. This is on Cycliq, by the way. There he goes. Almost takes out half the bunch. But yeah, look, Trekkie just gets up. You can see the power getting through that bunch back to the front. And once they get over the top of this climb, they hit a little flat section and then a little downhill as well. So that really just puts the axe to the sword for the guys who are dropped at the back there. It makes it really difficult for them to get back on this nice little sandy section. Go through turns, and you can see the bunch around about 30-40 riders. There's Mitch Docker, and he sees Trekkie going up the outside and goes, yep, I'll jump onto that as well, follow him around, because they know how good Trekkie is. Of course, he's won the Melbourne and Warrnambool road race himself. They turn through here, not long after that section. You can see a little gap opening up, and Jumping up ahead, I found Jensen on his own. He dropped his breakaway companion. This is around the 65 kilometre mark, and he was really pushing on in the aero position, working super hard and just using that nice centre of the road. You can see it's super smooth through the middle there, and he is just working to get across to Jack and Connor Sen, so he knows are out front, probably about a minute ahead. You can see them here working really well together. Connor looks a little tired there as well. You can see his cadence isn't as fluffy, isn't as light as Jack in the blue, but they hit the base of the KOM, and Jack just puts down the hammer, really pushing on. Look at his cadence there, just nice and fluffy, and Connor can't answer that on these steep slopes. And it was a challenging climb, I have to say. Lots of up and downs in this climb, hard to get your pace right. There's Connor, about 30 seconds back from Jack. Next we see 20 seconds back from him is Jensen. He says, I've got a rabbit and I'm on my way through. Mark attacked the bunch, trying to get the fastest time up the climb, of which he did, winning the reserve wheel set. This is a small bunch behind. If we just go back to the bottom of the climb here of Trekkie Johnston's cam, you can see Mitch Docker there in the background, really feeling it. This is actually after Mark O'Brien had attacked, and Mitch just starting to lose contact there. This is a really tough climb, going up to 14% in sections, but it wasn't the last we'd see of him, as we just move and see the bunch with Trekkie and Matty Bird further up the climb, a little bit after they dropped Mitch there. They were a minute behind. Here is the next group behind them. You can see Mitch Docker is there, Brendan Jones, and a few others there. There was one of the riders in there, I think the one leading, does crash out later. But yeah, beautiful spot here. This climb was around 15 kilometres long. Mark O'Brien and Courtney Sherwell taking the fastest times for the king and queen of the mountain, but just beautiful scenes. And speaking of Courtney Sherwell, this was the group she was in, about 10 minutes back from the lead group, and she was in a really solid group. And took the win easily. As we see, this is Trekkie's cam after that climb, and you can see in the background there is a chasing group. That is Mitch and Brendan Jones's group, and they do get back on through this section. This is the group 3 a little bit later, about 130 kilometres into the race, or maybe not that much, but around about that 100 to 130 kilometre mark. As you can see, nice little material here to roll over. Mitch is still trying to get back on, and there is John Davis up ahead in the orange pushing on, and Mitch is done at this point. He's just spent too many bickies. He told me he went too hard too early, as did Brendan Jones, who actually didn't have anything to eat, wasn't feeling that well in the morning, still managed to stay with the front group for quite a long time. And meanwhile, this is Group 1. They are chasing Jensen, Connor and Jack, and working together really nicely. You can see on the road they're getting into the pace line, swapping off. Enough time to look around and have a drink as well. You can see Trekkie getting into the food, so they're not pushing on too hard. But you've got Mark O'Brien in here, Matty Bird, Curtis Dowdell there in the multi-green colour, and a few other headers as well. But they are probably about 4 or 5 minutes away from these guys. Now, this is the top 3. Jensen has caught Connor and Jack. Connor getting back on after the climb, and Jensen was just motoring. He was on a mission, this bloke, and he was really taking a lot of risks through the downhill, and pushing on obviously on this little slight uphill as well. Connor looking a little bit better now in the cadence, maybe on the flatter stuff suiting him a bit more, but Jensen was on a rampage. And so the chase group behind were about 2.5 minutes, and you can see Matt Bird leading them through. It's thinned out a little bit, and after this they hit a little climb, of which Mark O'Brien detonated the group, and he put it down to 4 riders: Trekkie Johnston, Matthew Bird and Curtis Dowdell in the multicoloured green. But incredible scenes, and it was this climb that did the damage, and Mark O'Brien pushing on. And it also shelled Connor Sens as well, because you see we're down to 2 up front. This is Jensen and Jack Aitken still working really well together. And I gave him a time gap at this point. It was around 1.5 minutes. Beautiful scenery through here, this sort of logged section. This was a dream to drive through, and I put that rental car through its paces in this section. It was a nice sweeping downhill, and moving ahead towards the 3rd feed zone, which here comes Jensen, and he doesn't have his feed bag there. It was actually at the Tim Boone feed zone, the next one, where Map had set up a huge stand. They had drinks, they had music pumping, the DJ, they had the non-alcoholic beers there, the iced coffee as well. It was popping off in this location. The DJ had the decks running, they had a little CX course as well, shout out to them. There's little iced coffee numbers as well, but Jensen and Jack were about 45 minutes ahead of this group, which is Mark, Trekkie, and Curtis Dowdell. Matty Bird had 3 punches and punched it out of this group, unfortunately, and basically that was where the coverage ended for me. I had to hightail it to the finish to do my MC duties, make sure I could call through the short course contenders. But shout out to the victories there. It was good to see the short course getting a lot of support as well. But how the race ended up panning out, Jensen was the last man standing from the breakaway, dropping Jack shortly after the last feed zone at 190 kilometres to go. Jensen eventually ran out of juice, and the group of 3, Curtis Dowdell, Mark O'Brien, and Trekkie Johnson, made it across to him. Ended up dropping Jensen, and that 3 would go to the line to contest the finish. Brendan Johnston attacked with 1k to go and held it all the way through to the line. So the top 10, I'll run through everything here, is Brendan Johnston, of course. Trekkie Johnson first place, the time of 7 hours and 20 seconds. Curtis Dowdell was second place, Mark O'Brien, then Jensen Plowright, then Jack Aiken out all day in the breakaway. Matthew Bird in 6th place, Connor Sens as well, long day in the break in 7th, Mark Williams 8th, Gary Milburn 9th, and Charles Smart rounding out the top 10 with a time of 7 hours and 45 minutes. So super cool event, and hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was a pleasure to be a part of the first inaugural Dirty Warrny. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Many more videos like this coming up next year for a lot of other gravel races on the cards, and of course the Aussie Summer for the Press Room podcast. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, get back and check out the catalogue on Apple or Spotify, Google, whatever. There will be an episode for you there with some of the world's best cyclists, and there'll be more next year, of course, thanks to Zwift and the rest of the crew. So with that, I'll see you again very soon, legends, and take care.